All right, shalom, shalom, peace and blessings to the 12 tribes scattered abroad throughout the four corners of the earth. This your brother Amath, IQAhmath, first name, IQ is all the same, representing messengers of the covenant. This is our lesson regarding the memorial of Simon. As you see the title, Wars of the Maccabees, Simon versus the third beast, which is Greece. And if you go back to, many of you know, some of you may be new, may not be fully aware of the understanding or the breakdown of Daniel, the seventh chapter. Go back to our lesson regarding Daniel, the seventh chapter, and you'll get more information regarding the third beast, which is the kingdom of Greece, the beginning rule, world rule of the so called white man. All right. So when we're looking at Job 9, verse 24, that's the inception of his rule in 331 BC. Some say 333. Pick and choose based upon, historical data or the historians you choose to acknowledge. But most would, most scholars would concede that 331 would be the beginning of the rule of the Greeks through the war of, I believe it's the war of Granicus, um, or it might be, is it Granicus? It might be Battle of Issus. I think that was 332 to be specific. But nonetheless, what we're going to examine and get into is the history and why this is important regarding this memorial set up through the Spirit of the Most High. This is based upon the legacy and the saga of our people fighting for our laws and our commandments, trying to maintain righteousness through our temple. The drama that was going on and the infighting going on within our nation during the time of the rule of the Greeks. And there's some parallels that we can see even today of how things are playing out. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High while Yahweh Shai. Hopefully, everybody's well. Make sure you wipe your feet, man, when you come on in here. Hit the like button. Let's get the algorithms kicking. Prayerfully, everyone's keeping this holy day in the spirit. And let's get to it. Let's get to it. All right. So let me share my screen. We'll get to the scriptures, and got a little bit of visuals to share as well. We're going to start off in. Let me reduce myself. We'll get more of the scriptures and whatnot. We're going to start off in Job, the eighth chapter. All right. So Job 8 and 8. It says, "For inquire, I pray thee, of the former age, and prepare thyself to the search of their fathers." So the Most High is letting us know that we have to prepare ourselves to search out our forefathers, search out our history. This is why it's important. You know, the Christians and everybody else will be talking about, oh, it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter, ethnicity doesn't matter anymore, so forth and so on. That's all bogus. Okay, because if the Lord said that my people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge, the knowledge was the laws and the commandments of the Most High, let alone ourselves. Even Job himself said that if he didn't know himself, let's get that in Job. I think it's Job 9. And let's look at verse 21. Look at what Job said. "Though I were perfect, yet would I not know my soul. I would despise my life." So Job was known as a perfect man in the eyes of the Most High, who escheweth evil. But he said, even though I have a reputation of being perfect, even though I was able to attain to the laws and the commandments of the Most High and remain obedient in all things, he said, if he didn't know his soul, if he didn't understand himself, he didn't know who he was, if he didn't understand the operations of his soul and spirit, his sole purpose of being here to please the Most High, fear the commandments, so forth and so on, and know what that meant for his people, what did he say? I would despise my life. Now you see the plague that happens between black and brown people. Why we have self-hate. Why we are divesting away from our nation. You know, for the sisters that's out there divesting away from black and brown relationships, fleeing to the other nations, thinking that your salvation is in the hands of the so-called white man. You know, white zaddy is going to take care of you now. You swear off having relations with your brothers anymore. You know, that whole movement. You dig what I'm saying? So this is what the Most High is showing us through the words of Job. He said, if you don't know who you are, you would despise your life. This is why we see black on black crime. This is why we see the drug abuse. This is why we see the mental health crises that's going on within our communities. This is why we see the infighting that happens, because we don't know who we are. We don't understand and know our relationship with each other, let alone our relationship with the Most High. This is why it's important that we have to go back and search out our forefathers. How did our forefathers operate? How did our foremothers operate? That's what had us on a better level of understanding and a better stature here in the world, was when we were following after the ways of our forefathers and foremothers who were operating in righteousness. I'm not talking about when our people fell astray and fell off and got caught up in all manners of wickedness and idolatry and so. No, that's not the example. But we learn from those examples as what not to do. The righteous examples is what we're supposed to be following. So let's get back to Job, the 8th chapter. For inquire. What does inquire to mean? Let's look at that. What does it mean to inquire? Let's look at this. Let's look at the Cambridge dictionary. Inquire. To ask a question. They keep it is pretty simple here, man. Let's see if we can get anything a little bit more definitive. I'm pretty sure everybody kind of knows, but for the sake of understanding, right? To wonder, to ask, to address a question, an investigation. Look at that. Conduct an inquiry or an investigation of something as a verb. So when you're looking at investigations, you're looking for clues, you're looking for proof, you're looking for evidence. This is why it's such a journey, and this is why brothers that are laboring out there, man, burning the midnight oil, doing the research, gathering information, delivering it back to our people, needs to be saluted, because we're like spiritual private investigators doing deep investigations to bring back the knowledge of ourselves to our people. Even in Proverbs, the 25th chapter, the Most High said it's the glory of the Most High to conceal a thing, but it's the honor of kings to search out a matter. If we're trying to seek out to get the recognition of being kings and being rulers and overseers and teachers and so forth within our nation, the Lord said that you're going to have to investigate a matter. You're going to have to seek it out. It's not just given. We try to encourage it, as brothers, we try to encourage each other and call each other king and malak. But that's really like a title that's earned, that you have to really search it out. And there's nothing wrong with saluting each other in that fashion. I do it. It's all good, because we want to push each other to seek out those entitlements, right? So to inquire is what we're looking at. To what again? To ask, to investigate, or to conduct an inquiry. So when we're being acknowledged and being advised to go back and to inquire and search out a matter, Lord said, you got to go investigate. Go out and investigate. I pray thee of the former age. What's the former age? The past. And prepare thyself to the search of their fathers. For we are but of yesterday and know nothing, because our days upon earth are a shadow. So look, we're learning that everything that we're about is of yesterday, meaning the past, and don't know anything. So what do we have to do? We got to go back and we got to kind of find out, what did we miss out on? Because why? Our days upon earth are a shadow. Where's the shadow? The shadow's behind us. The reflection that comes from the sun beaming off of your body, the shadow goes behind you. So in all wisdom, we're seeing that everything that we need to know that's going to be of necessity for us, we have to look behind us first in order to get this knowledge, right? Let's jump over to Jeremiah. Jeremiah, the 6th chapter. Oops, lucky. Jeremiah 6. Let's read 16. And we see here, it says, thus saith the Most High Yahweh, stand ye in the ways and see, and ask for the old paths. Again, that's part of the investigation. Ask for the old paths. Seek out and inquire of the former age. Where is the good way? Again, that's what we're looking for, is the right way. Old past, meaning what? The good way, the righteous ways of the past, and walk therein. Once we learn about it, then we have to live, learn, and apply it and start walking that walk. Not just take it as superficial knowledge, not just take it as another, another round in the clip of things that I know. No, now we've got an obligation to walk in what we learned. And ye shall find rest for your souls. Isn't that what we're all seeking out? Rest for our souls, right? But they said, we will not walk therein. And there's always going to be a contingency of hard head, stiff neck, black and brown folks, otherwise known as the Israelites that the Bible speaks of, blacks, Hispanics, Native Americans, who will deny the facts that the history that we're, uncovering and revealing and sharing and learning how to memorialize our forefathers. Oh, that's not important. Oh, we don't care about that. We're too busy about the paper chase, too busy about getting high, too busy about partying, too busy gossiping, too busy backbiting, too busy, having strife with brothers and sisters and fighting on the streets and trying to go viral with world star moments, and too busy trying to be the next, LeBron James, too busy trying to be the next, NFL quarterback, whatever the case may be. Our priorities get misconstrued. And then when we try to bring out the important matters of our people and our nation, it gets thrown to the side, right? But there's always going to be a remnant who will uh, abide by what the Lord told us to do. That's promised, right? Let's jump over here to let's jump to Sirach. I need to use a let's see. Shalaki, I'm using this different app. My usual app ain't working right now. So I'm trying to get used to this one. It's my here we go. Okay, so we're gonna go to Sirach 44. Now, you've got some Israelite camps who don't acknowledge, who don't keep these days. Don't keep memorial assignment, don't keep the battle and the destruction of Nicanor or Nicanor. There's some that don't. Okay, whatever. I'm not going to be contentious about that. But at the end all be all, because they say, hey, it's not in the Bible. It's just a memorial. We don't really recognize. I don't know whatever the reasoning is. Some have different reasonings. Most do acknowledge and keep these days. All praise to the Most High. But let's look at what the scriptures say, right? Why we should be advised to keep these days. Okay. Um, Sirach 44, verse 1, it says, let us now praise famous men and our fathers that begat us. So we're being advised to acknowledge and praise and acknowledge and see the things that the famous men of our nation did. Simon Maccabee, Judas Maccabees, Mattathias. When we're seeing the works of Esther, Mordecai, these are all things that the Lord said we got to give praise to them, because of the situations that the Most High put them in, really dealt with the preservation of our nation, our laws, our commandments, our temple ordinances. Without them, we would have nothing to this day. And the Lord put them through particular trials, tribulations, wars, in order to preserve what we now are declaring on the street corners and in our uh, uh, churches and homes and so forth and so on. This is all because of these famous men that were out there sacrificing for our nation. So, as the scriptures tell us, we should be acknowledging and doing these things, right? Continuing on, it says, the Lord have wrought great glory by them through his great power from the beginning. So, when we're reading about Judas Maccabeus going up against the Greek armies, and Simon and his brother Jonathan, and them carrying on numerous battles to preserve the sanctity of our nation, to protect the women and the children. That all came through great glory. The Most High gave them great glory and victory over our people. Why wouldn't you want to celebrate that? Right? Continuing on. Such as did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel by their understanding and declaring prophecies. So we've got great men of prophecy, all of the particular prophets, Nahum, Habakkuk, Jeremiah. You got Malachi, Zechariah, Zephaniah. You got, Isaiah, Jeremiah. I mean, the list goes on and on. Ezra, Moses, Yahweh Shai. How can I even forget the king? Such as did bear rule in their kingdoms, men renowned for their power, giving counsel by their understanding and declaring prophecies, leaders of the people by their counsels and by their knowledge of learning, meet for the people, wise and eloquent in are their instructions. So when we read about and see men like Mattathias, leaders of the people, held strong counsel to be in defiance of the oppression that the Greeks were imposing upon our people. He said that he was given knowledge of learning meat for our people. This is what our people needed. Wise and eloquent are their instructions. Continuing on, it says, such as found out musical tunes and recited verses in writing. So even with the music that goes on, we had great musicians. Asaph, you had the priesthood that was out there singing. You had David who was writing songs. You got Solomon that was writing songs. So music was done. Even that was translated into knowledge and understanding. The scriptures even tell us, man, if we're going to sing with the understanding also. So if you ain't singing with understanding, man, to give edification to our people or to try to give them a little bit of jewels and plant seeds in their minds about encouraging them to maintain their walk in this faith, then the lyrics ain't right. Musical tunes recited in verses, right? So the Most High don't give a damn about drill music and all the other foolishness that's going on out there. He's not caring about all the seductive and adulterous and fornicating so-called R&B that's going on nowadays. He don't give a damn about that. He cares about us really reciting verses that's based upon wise and eloquent instruction, knowledge of learning. Right? Let's get that precept. In Psalms. Oops, lucky. Psalm 47, verse 7. It says, for Yahweh is the king of all the earth. Sing ye praises with understanding. So if we're going to sing, the Lord said it's got to be with understanding. It's got to be back behind that, man. We ain't talking about the emotional song and dance that they do in gospel and all that. And a lot of them sisters, man, keep it real. They got beautiful voices. But their understanding is off because they're singing behind just emotional pick-me-ups. They're singing behind false doctrines of Christianity. They've turned it into a commercialized situation to where they've got gospel music awards. It's about glorifying themselves and not the Most High anymore. People are getting exalted and putting in stardom and all this other stuff, man. That's when things are going off. Because now vainglory enters into the situation, and now the praising of the Most High gets misconstrued, and you start trying to sing things and rap things that please the people that the people want to hear, and the people don't always want to hear the right things. So then you end up, carteling your content to please the people and not the Most High. So that can become problematic, right? So getting back over here to Sirach 44. I'm gonna just read down to verse 9. It says, such as found out musical tunes and recited verses and writing, rich men furnished with ability, living peaceably in their habitations. All these were honored in their generations, and were the glory of their times. There be of them that have left a name behind them, that their praises might be reported. So when we're hearing about a Simon Maccabee, that's a name that was left behind, that their praises might be reported, so that we might have a record of understanding what went on with him and his brothers and his father, and a brave men that aligned themselves with them, going to war with the heathen. Right? So once those things are recognized, man, the Lord said you got to memorialize that their praises are to be left behind so that they can be acknowledged. You don't go beyond it and be like, oh yeah, I read about that, but yeah, I'm not keeping that. I'm not acknowledging that. Verse 9, it says, and some there be which have no memorial, who are perished as though they had never been. So, we've talked about this before. when you're dealing with like the Kemetic community and others, Pan Africans. Oh, well, where's the bones of Moses? Where's the bones of Abraham? Where's the bones of Simon Maccabee? Where we ain't hear about none of these people, man. They ain't exist. Well, guess what, man? The so-called white man has made a conscious effort of destroying records, destroying bodies, destroying grave sites. You know, there's a case, I believe I reported on this at a DSTM probably about a good year and a half ago, where they have a whole memorial, a whole burial site in Florida that they built a business upon. A whole see, I don't want to misconstrue. Let me see this. Yeah, look at this. CBS News. See, this has been going on for a long time. And it continues on. This is July 2023. All right. This is not an isolated story. Forgotten black cemeteries are uncovered in Florida. I'm just highlighting that. That's just one story. Notice it said that this isn't an isolated story. This is continual, right? This is continual. So-called lost black cemeteries. They know what's going on, man. Those men and women that died, one of them was a particular church where they was buried. Everything was all getting covered over. Everybody that got buried in there, man, was not acknowledged in the right fashion. They weren't memorialized correctly upon their deaths. So when we're talking about great men of our history and our stature, as much of the so-called white man is spent much of his lifetime destroying records, burning books, okay, trying to make sure that our legacy and history is completely misconstrued, and any information that is left out, they throw out disinformation, and they've got agents that are out there trying to make sure that anybody that starts sniffing out and investigating on the paths of truth gets deterred and thrown off. Oh no, that's not true. Oh, that's not right. Oh, black doesn't mean that. Swarthy doesn't mean that. Oh, that just meant that they were sad. You know, there's always these operatives out there with some sort of opposition. For every time we come up with more history, more information, you know, we start uncovering, we see about the Dark Ages. We start seeing about the black nobility that was going on in Europe. You know, everywhere from Germany to the UK to Russia to Poland. You know, all over the place, man. You start seeing all of the evidences of our people. Oh yeah, there was black Vikings. You won't see none of them on TV now because they made an effort to make sure that they never existed. Just like when you was on the path of trying to figure out who you were, you never thought there was any such thing as a so-called black or Hispanic Jew. Because what Psalms 83 says that they are Confederate, that they want to make sure that the name of Israel is no more remembrance. So yeah, there is going to be instances where you won't find the remains of our forefathers and foremothers, man. That yeah, even if you leave it to Egypt, man, they all the kings of Egypt and the Netters and all that, they ain't finding all them damn bones. A lot of them they didn't start finding until like the 18th dynasty. Some of the earlier ones is what, you know, come on. We just got to be real with stuff. If we don't acknowledge and say that, yeah, there's definitely been a conspiracy to cover up and destroy evidence when it comes to our people, our history, and our legacy, and then we look at it and say, why is it only us? Why are we always the ones who are trying to search out for our homeland, trying to search out for our true nationality and history? Why are we the ones that's always been dictated about what our ethnicity is when we got to go fill out a job application or a census report? Why are they constantly changing African American, Afro American, Negro, Black, colored? You know, why is this constantly changing? Our identity is changing. Hispanic, Latino, Chicano, you know, those things are constantly being misconstrued and changed over. Oh no, I'm Azteca. No, you know, all these things are constantly changing. We're Latino, non-white, not Latino, white. You know, they're constantly throwing out misdirection and confusion. Even the book of Daniel tells us that in Daniel, I believe it's Daniel. Is it Daniel 9? Not Daniel 9. Oh, shoot, what is that one? Yeah, it is Daniel 9. My bad, y'all. Gotta have some more confidence in my memory. Daniel 9 and 7. All right. So it says, O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee, but unto us confusion of faces. See, this is why we're the ones trying to figure out who's who, what's what. And the only thing the so-called white man is leaves out little breadcrumbs for us to kind of gnaw at and pick up until he leads us into a whole nother path of foolishness. So he continues with the confusion, right? But it says, "But unto us confusion of faces, as at this day, to the men of Judah and to the inhabitants of Jerusalem and to all Israel that are near and that are far off, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee." So there's going to be confusion of faces, not knowing who we are, our history, our legacy, our culture, laws, so forth and so on. All confusion goes on between the Black, Hispanic, and Native American communities, as it is this day, wherever we're at. All right. And our enemies know that. So when we get back to Sirach 44, verse 9, it says, "And some there be which have no memorial, who are perished as though they had never been, and are become as though they had never been born, and their children after them." See, people went, "Oh, they ain't never exist." Maccabee, what? No, they ain't never heard of them. Did they find the bones? Where's the grave sites at? You understand what I'm saying? Like this is the type of things that we have to battle and we have to implore the faith, and we got to look at historians are all saying the same thing. These people existed. There's no question about it. They found coins and archaeology dating back to the time of the Maccabees, temple ruins. You know, the archaeology is there. All right, so let's look at it. Jeremiah 8, we'll read 1 down to 3. "At that time, saith Yahweh, they shall bring out the bones of the kings of Judah, and the bones of his princes, and the bones of the priests, and the bones of the prophets, and the bones of the inhabitants of Jerusalem out of their graves." So grave robbing was going on, right? Removal of bones and graves. There's areas in Jerusalem right now that are restricted that you can't even go to, that were grave sites where our people were being buried at. Verse 2, "And they shall spread them before the sun and the moon and all the hosts of heaven, whom they have loved, and whom they have served, and after whom they have walked, and after and whom they have sought, and whom they have worshipped. They shall not be gathered nor be buried, they shall be for dung upon the face of the earth. And death shall be chosen rather than life, by all the residue of them that remain of this evil family, which remain in all the places whither I have driven them, saith the Most High Yahweh of hosts." So we see what happens, even our own people were removing and desecrating graves. So when we're talking about the history of where our people is at, this is what ends up happening. So when we go back to Sirach, it says, "And then there's going to be some who's not going to have a memorial." So even up to now, you have some that's in the truth that refuse to memorialize, you know, some of our people. You got the OT onlys, that ain't with it, or that that aren't acknowledging it. You got some that's just like, look, if it ain't in the first 5 books, we don't acknowledge it as a holy day, so forth and so on, right? So Esther and Purim gets excluded, and Nicanor gets excluded, and memorial assignment gets excluded. But we see here, man, that we're choosing to make sure that we memorialize and acknowledge things according to the scriptures. Let's get to the history now. Let's look at a little bit of the history. Let's get over to the Maccabees. I gotta stick with this one. Gotta stick with this one. All right. So we're gonna look at let's open up the Maccabees chapter 1. We're gonna get right to the meat of the matter, so to speak. So many of you know and have heard this before regarding the invasion of the Greeks and them coming into power under Alexander. So we're going to read this and briefly look at some of this history and then we'll move on. I don't want to be too repetitive. Some of the information, like I said, you're going to see in the Daniel 7 um, uh, breakdown. You probably heard it before, and previous lessons regarding Simon or Maccabee. Excuse me, Judas Maccabeus and the Feast of Dedication. But for history's sake, we have to revisit this. There's new people listening and watching all the time. Beginning with First Maccabees 1. In verse 1, it says, "And it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and the Medes, and Salaki, that he reigned in his stead the first over Greece." So this is the beginning of the reign of the so-called white man, and it happened. What is it talking about? Job 9:24, the earth being given into the hand of the wicked. Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, has smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes. So the second beast of um, Daniel 7 is talking about the Medo-Persian Empire. And Darius was the last king to rule after he was taken down by Alexander. So this is the transferring from the second beast to the third beast, right? Now it says, "And made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth." So as he's going to war in the battle, let me share this with you. He's going to war in the battle. We see different battles that was being waged in the conquering of the Greek Empire. The Battle of Issus in 332 by Alexander, facing Darius III, right? Here's another battle here. The Battle of Granicus, May of 334 BC. These are many battles that, Alexander was going out having to conquer to establish rule over all nations. The Battle of Halicarnassus, 334 BC, right? These are all the battles and the wars that was being fought in order for Alexander to establish this kingdom. Look at the expansion of the Greek kingdom, right? See, in Daniel 7, it talks about the four winds that were battling over the Great Sea being the Mediterranean. The sea also is talking about the people, according to Revelation 17. So we're talking about all of these kings, battling for rule over the people, and the Great Sea that acknowledges the beginning and the borders of where their conquerings will begin is over here, the Mediterranean, going all the way east into India, so forth and so on. So here we see the stronghold of the Greeks. If you look here, right? Take a look at that. It's a vast empire that our people that were subject to under Alexander. Okay, all the way. We see all of this in Egypt, Cyrene, right? Macedonia, Thrace. These are all the lands when we're especially reading about uh, New Testament, the travels of Paul and the apostles, going into places like Phrygia, going into places like uh, 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 Cappadocia, Ephesus. You know, these are all places that was going down. Now, if you see right here where the red is, Issus, this is where one battle took place. Here's another one over here, Gargamella. That was another battle. All these strongholds, Granicus up here, the ones we were just talking about. Once Alexander was able to conquer these lands, this is when they started imposing Greek rule, and what's known as Hellenization took place. We'll look at that in a minute. See, as he keeps expanding east, and eventually the rest of the nations, they all fell in line. But the so-called white man went in and conquered, mingled his seed, the whole nine was going on under the rule of Alexander. Here's a closer look at some of uh, the land masses that they conquered. Okay, all of places which we see: Alexandria, Macedonia, Thrace, Athens, so forth and so on. All right, so we see those things. Now, let's get back over here to Maccabees. So it says, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth and went through the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him, whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up. So we got big headed, right? His heart, he got exalted. All the nations, were subject unto him. He went through the ends of the earth. So when it's talking about the ends of the earth, it's talking about the known earth at the time. So when we looked at the map, this is what was known as the earth. This is where everybody was dwelling at. For the most part, what was known as the expansion of the 10 tribes in the northern kingdom, the vast majority of them, there were still remnants that were still around in this area. But for the most part, they had already fled after 722 BC and fled to America, right? But the known operating earth was here. Continuing on. Now it says, and he gathered a mighty strong host and ruled over countries and nations and kings who became tributaries unto him. And after these things he fell sick and perceived that he should die. Wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So you had co-regencies going on. As Alexander is dying, many say that he died of syphilis. Some say he was poisoned. Depending on which scholar you want to acknowledge. Um, I'm because I got a confirmation bias. I'm of the opinion that he died of syphilis because of his exploits, sexual exploits. That he was involving himself in. But nonetheless, uh, when he parted his kingdom, he parted it into 4 regions and 4 kings. So if we're looking at even when Daniel 7, we're talking about the 4 wings. These are in I believe it's in Daniel 7. We talk about the 4 wings. I believe that was the analogy that was given for the. Let me make sure. Hold on 1 second. I don't want to misquote nothing because you know how that goes. Oh, yeah. It's like 4 wings on the leopard. Yeah. 4 wings were his 4 generals. Okay. Um, Now they had other generals, but the 4 prominent that finally established a rule because they had infighting even within themselves. We'll see in a minute. But let's look at this. Continuing on. It says, wherefore he called his servants, such as were honorable and had been brought up with him from his youth, and parted his kingdom among them while he was yet alive. So Alexander reigned 12 years, and then he died, and his servants bare rule, everyone in his place. And after his death, they all put crowns upon themselves. So did their sons after them many years, and evils were multiplied in the earth. See what happens when the white man gets control? Nothing but evils were multiplied in the earth once they started crowning themselves co-rulers of the kingdom of Alexander. All of them made themselves kings and ruled in their steads. Right. So let's look at this. Hold on. So here we have one of the wings, or one of the generals, was Seleucus, Nicator. You had Ptolemy, Soter. You had Lysimachus, and you had Cassander. Okay, each bear their rule in their own regions. They had wars within themselves, the wars of the Diadochi or the Diadochi. These were internal wars that they were having, trying to fight for dominance. That's why we know the so-called white man and his lust for power, he will fight himself to bear rule over everybody. They can't just evenly divide up the spoils and be like, okay, I'm cool with what I got, you cool with what you got. They all slap crowns on themselves and then went at it with each other for final rule. There was another one called Antigonus. He was another general, but he lost his territory to Seleucus. Okay, so here you see all the wars from 322 to 281. Macedonia, Greece, Thrace, Anatolia, the Levant, Egypt, Babylon, and Persia were all part of these wars that they were fighting for expansion. Okay, So if you see here, Seleucus had the biggest expansion of rule. Ptolemy had these areas down here in Egypt, right? So if you're really looking at the expansion of the rule of each one, Lysimachus, he was ruling over Thrace and Asia Minor. Up here, Cassander, he was ruling over Macedonia and Greece. Ptolemy was down here, with Egypt, Cyprus, Petra, Palestine. He was ruling all this area down here. And then you had Seleucus, who had the biggest territory with Asia Minor, Mesopotamia, India, so forth and so on, right? And like I said, Seleucus defeated um, Antigonus, who had this region up in here in their wars. Okay, there's just another map, showing the expansion of the rules of the Greeks. So once they set it up, they divided it up into four. Each one made themselves kings, ruling in their own jurisdictions, and infighting and fighting for power with each other. All right. So let's get back over here to. I'm gonna read down to verse 11. In First Maccabees 1:10, it says, "And there came out of them a wicked root, Antiochus surnamed Epiphanes." And that means power or God manifested. So he anointed himself to say that he was God, and it was now manifested during the times when evils were multiplied in the earth. If the times was already evil, how bad could he have been if he was a wicked root in the time of evil? That means that he was nothing but rooted in evil and wickedness. Son of Antiochus the king, who had been in hostage at Rome, and he reigned in the 137th year of the kingdom of the Greeks. So 137 BC, Antiochus takes over after his father, and there was already infighting with the creeping up of Rome, and they're seeking out for power, right? So this is pre, Greco-Roman era, before they, merged for a moment, before the Romans completely took over. But verse 11, it says, "In those days went out of Israel wicked men who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and make a covenant with the heathen that are round about us. For since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow." So here we're seeing a transition to where there is wickedness that is prevailing amongst our people. You've got sellouts out there who persuaded our people to follow after the ways of the Greeks, to follow after their customs, right? Look at it. So it says, "So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward herein that they went to the king, who gave them license." He gave them authority to do after their ordinances of the heathen. This is the beginning stages of Hellenism. This is when Jews converted and changed their ways to live after the manners of the Greeks. Many of you know this, some of you don't. This is the gap where the Christians completely miss history and understand what was going on with the plight of our people being called Greeks, following after Greek customs and ways, still for almost 500 years later, living in these same areas, right? Phrygia, Cilicia, Cappadocia, all of these same areas where people was living in Syria and in Turkey, Thessalonica, right? These are all areas that where Greeks were ruling, that our people were being subject to, being ruled over by the Seleucid Empire, following after the Greek customs and ways. You think that changed? You think all of a sudden, but once the gospel is being spread outside of Jerusalem and the apostles being sent out to go gather the lost sheep of the house of Israel, why do you think James 1:12, 1:1 says, let's get that real quick. James 1, servant of the Most High and of the Lord, Hamashiach Yahweh, the brother of Christ, says what? Who did he address his letter to? James, the servant of the Most High and of our Lord, Yahweh Hamashiach, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. So he's still acknowledging our Forefathers of the apostles and the disciples knew that the mission did not change. Our people were scattered abroad. These 12 tribes are scattered all around in here, all in these areas and abroad. They knew that. So what was the mission? Go out to the 12 tribes that were scattered abroad, who for damn near 500 years have been following after the ways that they were licensed to do, to follow after the ordinances of the heathen. So you've got massive brainwashing of our people, just like right now in America, our people talk about the 400 years, 400 years. Well, imagine 400 years that we've had our names changed. We've been following after the customs of the land. We've been eating after the diets of these people. We've abided by their laws and their customs. We were given particular licenses of understanding of what we can and can't worship. You understand what I'm saying? It's the same thing that was going on as we found ourselves Hellenized by the ways of America, until we woke up and realized, hold on, this is not our origins. This is not what we're supposed to be following. I need to go back and seek out my heritage. I have to investigate. I have to inquire. And once they do that, and we did that, now we realize our true calling. Now we've been brought back into the fold of Israel. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High for the sacrifice of Hamashiach Yahweh, for us to be under the grace and mercies of the Most High, in order for us to repent and change our ways, so we can be reconciled back with our Father and be brought back under covenant relationship, so that we can actually inherit what was rightfully ours from the beginning. That's what this is all about. So when we double back and we see everything that was going on, where did our people go wrong when it comes down to the transition of the New Testament dynamic between the circumcision and the circumcision? And there's no difference between Jew or Greek. No, there is no difference. They're the same people, but one is calling themselves and following after Greek ways. One was still rooted in acknowledged with the temple ordinances and going to the Sabbath and circumcising on the 8th day and so forth and so on. That was the Jews. That was the circumcision. That was the ones who were still rooted and maintained in their ways, which is a carryover from the legacy of the Hasmonean dynasty and John Hyrcanus, and the carrying on of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and them maintaining the laws and the priesthood and so forth and so on. There were some who were still rooted in those ways. But remember, there was a flip side. There was a whole nother dynamic of our people who were following after Greek customs and ways for hundreds of years, until Yahweh Shai came, and the apostles and the disciples. So it was always there. Our people following after the ordinances of the heathen. It says, whereupon they built a place of exercise at Jerusalem according to the customs of the heathen. Let's jump back up here. Verse 11, in those days went out of Israel wicked men. Well, let's look at an example of these wicked men. Let's look at one example that influenced and told our people, you know what, this is the ways you should be following. This is what you should be into. Let's look at Lucky, y'all. I gotta get used to this this other app. Second Maccabees. I want to look at this 3rd chapter. Once I find it. Okay, there we go. Second Maccabees. Let's look at the 3rd chapter. And I want to read. Let's see. I'm gonna start here. And chapter 3, and matter of fact, I want to let me see where I want to go. Yeah, all right, let's start at 3. Let me just read. Let me skip around a little bit. All right. So verse 1, it says, now when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well because of the godliness of Onias the high priest and his hatred of wickedness. So we're at a point now in Jerusalem The holy city is inhabited. It's all peaceful. Everything is going well. We've got a righteous high priest known as Onias, who hates wickedness and makes sure that the laws and the statutes and commandments are being kept. Right? Very well. So he was enforcing the law. Now watch this. It says, and it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple with their with their best gifts. So even the heathen kings that were ruling over us, because bottom line, this is just how it works. Just same way in America, you got governors and satrap rulers over different particular areas in every state or whatnot. Just kind of think of it that way. But you got kings. There was a king that was ruling over Jerusalem under the Seleucid Empire, right? And they were even given temples of the temple gifts so that they can, so we can maintain our sacrifices. So Onias is ruling in righteousness and even found favor in the eyes of the heathen. Let me get that precept here. The scripture said, man, when a man's ways please the Lord, look at this Proverbs 16:7. Proverbs 16:7 says, when a man's ways please the Most High Yahweh, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. So, when we want relief from our enemies, the Lord said, man, what you need to do is please me. Well, how do we do that? By keeping the commandments, the laws, the righteousness of the Most High, righteous judgment, so forth and so on. So it says, when a man's ways please Yahweh, he maketh even his enemies to be at peace with him. That's what Onias was experiencing. Getting back to Maccabees. It says, now when the holy city was inhabited with all peace and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias the high priest and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place and magnify the temple with their best gifts. Insomuch that Seleucus of Asia, right? We just got to reading about him, of his revenues bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. So Seleucus was funding us being able to keep righteous sacrifices and do what we need to do to maintain the temple and keep purity within our nation. Because what? When we're moving in righteousness, we're a peaceable people. When Solomon was ruling, it said we have 40 years of what? Peace. When we was following after righteousness. Let us do our thing, man. Let us be segregated away. What did Moses? What was Moses' whole obligation? What was his plea to Pharaoh? Let my people go that we may worship our Father. And you won't have no problems out of us. You see, that's how it works. So in so much Seleucus to Asia of his own revenue, so he was paying, bear all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices. But look at this. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, this is not Simon Maccabee. The Maccabees were of the Levitical bloodline. Okay. Let me see. I don't think it. We'll get that. We'll get that in a minute. We'll get that in a minute. But one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about disorder in the city. So here you have a brother named Simon of the tribe of Benjamin. He's made governor. He's like an overseer and a ruler of the people of the temple or whatnot. So under King Seleucus, he appointed Simon to rule over and govern the city and the temple. Now he got into it with Onias about ordinances being kept in the temple or whatnot. Mind you, Simon of the tribe of Benjamin is wicked. So when he tries to approach Onias about doing some more wickedness, Onias rebuked him. So they wasn't having it. And he lost it. He lost a debate and an argument in public or whatnot. And he became wrought with anger, man, and jealousy and envy and wickedness. And the seeds of malice was all within his in the framework of his spirit after that. Because Onias stood on business as far as being righteous and didn't want to commit himself to doing any wickedness and fell out. They had a falling out. Verse 5. And when he could not overcome Onias, he got him to Apollonius, the son of Thracius, who then was governor of Celesyria and Phoenice. So what does Simon do? He goes to Wyzati. Apollonius, who's the governor over their district. Now, when it's saying that Simon was governor, he was governor over the temple. So he's governor over the temple in the city, and but he had somebody over him, which was the so-called white man Apollonius, who was the main governor, right? So you're talking about a governor is like a chancellor, or sub ruler or whatnot, and they put somebody over them. It's almost like an overseer. White man ain't gonna give us full autonomy to just rule ourselves. So Onias goes to White Zaddy and starts complaining and whining and bringing up false charges, accusations, and lies about Onias, and also sold out the temple treasury. Look at this. Verse 6, it says, so he went to Apollonius, and what did he do? And told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring all into the king's hand. So he says, hey, that money Seleucus was given, they sitting on a gold mine over there, man. They over the temple is balling. You know what? You need to go take that money and bring it back to the king, because they ain't using all that money for the sacrifices. And Apollonius is like, well, how much is it? It's innumerable, man. I can't even count. I don't even know. But boss, you need to get that money. Take it back to the king. Now look at this. Now when these names, Apollonius came to the king and showed him of the money whereof he was told, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with commandment to bring him the foresaid treasury. So white man says, what? Them niggas is over there hoarding my money? Okay. Heliodorus, head of the treasury, said, man, go send it out as the king's commandment. Go get that money. So he sends him out to go get the money, right? So forthwith Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Celesyria and Phoenice, but indeed to fulfill the king's purpose. So Heliodorus goes out there and he's acting like he's just doing a random wellness check on the city, seeing how everything's going, how's everybody doing. But meanwhile, he was really going there to go collect that money. That's why I said he went under the color of visiting the cities. So he made it seem like he was there on a friendly visit. But meanwhile, he was going there to go seize the money of the temple. Verse 9, and when he was come to Jerusalem, he had been courteously received of the high priest of the city. He told him what intelligence was given of the money, and declared wherefore he came, and asked if these things were so indeed. So once he meets up with Onias greets him with peace and welcomes and whatnot. And then Heliodorus is like, well, I'm hearing about this uncounted sums of money, man, that you guys are hoarding for the king, and you're not spending it accordingly to the temple sacrifices. What's up with that? Where's all this extra money at? Right now, if you remember, I just did DSTM last Sabbath, and I showed everybody about the reminders regarding the former president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi, that died in a helicopter crash back in September. America had $6 billion of their money seized. They negotiated a release of 5 American hostages. And then America says, well, we'll give you back your money that they were holding in private accounts in South Korea, Salakia, in South Korea, and then they transferred them to Qatarian banks in Europe. So, just showing how the so-called white man controls all finance, controls all money, controls all nations. He's got his hands in everybody's pot. He controls where and how funds are spent. So when they gave Ibrahim Raisi the money back, which is their own money, he told them you could only spend it on this, that, and the third. Only humanitarian needs. Got to be used for food. Got to be used for healthcare and this, that, and the third. And Ibrahim Raisi was like, what? This is my money. We're going to do whatever we want with the money. So flashing back in history, and we're seeing here, tribute was given to the temple in Onias, and they said, well, it's only for the sacrifices. We'll fund it, but, meanwhile, the money that's given, Onias was like, look, this is money that our people is actually, a lot of the money wasn't just the money that was being given from Seleucus. A lot of the money was being donated by the people as well. So Onias is like, hold on, all this money is not to the king. But look at this. It says, then, so Heliodorus is questioning him, what's up with the money? Verse 10, it says, then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for relief of widows and fatherless children. That's keeping of the law. That's keeping of the commandments, right? The Lord said we're supposed to take care of the fatherless and be a husband to the widows and so forth and so on. So they said, well, when our widows need help and the fatherless children, we make sure that we've got um, charitable support for them. So no, we're not spoiling and we're not using the money in wickedness, or we're not, out here being greedy preachers, loving filthy lucre, doing what we want with it. All right. So continuing on, it says, and that some of it belonged to Hyrcanus, son of Tobias, a man of great dignity. And they said, and a lot of the money belongs to Hyrcanus. We're not sitting on anything that isn't being used in righteousness. And not as that wicked Simon that misinformed. So he said, hold on, Simon, that wicked, that damn wicked Benjamite Negro, he's lying. We're not over here hoarding money and doing whatever we want with it. He said, he's misinformed you, Heliodorus. This is well accounted for money. It said the sum whereof in all was 400 talents of silver and 200 talents of gold. Now, when you look at the value of what this means, a talent in today's terms is approximately almost 75 pounds. So just do the math. I did the math on this, right? Approximately, they were holding $14.4 million, according to today's standard of what an ounce of gold and silver is worth today. An ounce. Right now, an ounce of silver is around $30. Gold is at like $2,300, give or take. That's an ounce. So they have 400 talents of silver. That's approximately $14.4 million in today's economy that they had in the temple of silver. The gold was worth, get this, $552 million, give or take. Lord, what did I'm doing my math right? Each talent is 75 pounds, right? A pound is 16 ounces. So if you're multiplying 16 ounces as a representative of a pound, and you've got, I think this came out to like 30,000 pounds. And this was, I forgot what it was, but I don't have time to go back over the whole math equation. But anyway, when you do the math, they had almost $500 million in gold, 14.4 million in silver. And we're talking about black folks here. And that was to take care of the temple. And this is money. And they said a lot of the money was Hyrcanus's money. Jakes was balling under the Greek rule when we were following after what? Righteousness. Remember, Onias was making sure that the laws and statutes was being kept. So when we read in Deuteronomy, the first chapter, 28 chapter, 1 down to 14, we see all the prosperity that our people would have got if we kept the laws and the commandments of the Lord. Case in point here, Onias was keeping righteousness in the city. Everybody was doing uprightness. What happened? We were prospering in our captivity. We had money. And guess who came for it? Yeah, one little wicked Negro was like, you know what? I'm going to ruin the temple, man. I'm going to go sell it out. I'm going to make sure that the white man come and seize all this money. So look at this. And that it was altogether impossible that such wrongs should be done unto them that had committed it to the holiness of the place and to the majesty and the inviolably sanctity of the temple honored over all the world. So he says, man, it's impossible that wrong is going to be done. We're committing to holiness over here. Verse 13, but Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So Heliodorus said, yeah, all that set aside, hey, the king said, give us that money. So we're coming to seize this money. So what do they end up having to do? You keep reading on, you see and realize what ended up happening. But the point I want to make, just for time's sake, is Uh, you had Uncle Tom, man, that was jealous over what ended up happening with him and Onias. He took that personal little issue and then went and spoiled the whole temple and made Heliodorus go out and try to seize the money, right? But our people went out, they went out, in mourning and sackcloth and everything else. And the Most High ended up um hearing the prayers, but at the end all be all, if we look down here, you know, here you see everybody was out in fear. They heard that the high priest was getting put under scrutiny. Heliodorus was coming to seize the money. Sisters coming out, mourning in the streets, right? They all praying. Everybody's praying towards the Most High, giving supplication. Drop down here. It says they then called upon the Almighty Lord to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. But what? Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now, as he was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, the Lord of spirits and the Prince of all power caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of the Most High and fainted and were sore afraid. So the prayers of the Most High was heard. See, even though we was praying, we were trying to, he witnessed our people out there in the streets. Look, it said that the women, young women and all that, they wasn't even used to coming out into the streets like that. It said they went out to the gates, over the walls. Everybody's looking out the windows. The prayers and the supplications of our people have been, people were flocking out of their houses in great supplication. This is an example to show you, man, when we want the power of the Lord to really come upon us as a nation, we got to be unified and we have to be pleading to the Lord and crying to the Lord in unison for the same objective and the same goals. That's when the Lord's going to hear us. Because even though the Greeks were witnessing all this, they was like, look, I don't give a damn. Y'all can pray to your God, do what you want to. I'm coming in and I'm getting that money. But guess what? The Lord put the spirit of fear on them, broke down the Greeks, shut them down, and they didn't leave with a damn thing. Right? It says, for there appeared unto them an horse with a terrible rider upon him and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet. And it seemed that he sat upon the horse, had complete a harness of gold. So he put an angel of the Lord, man, struck the fear in Heliodorus and shut it down, right? So you can, read that on your own time, the rest of that history with that part, right? But I want to read the fourth chapter. Let's read the fourth chapter because this is a little bit more in depth. Because remember, we're getting back to the point to where it said that there was wicked men that seduced our people into following after the ways of the Greeks and gave them license to sin. Now, Simon was one of the ones that did it. You had another cat named Menelaus. Menelaus was another one, sellout, of our people. So look at this. This Simon now of whom we spake afore, having been a betrayer of the money and of his country, so he sold out not only the temple and the money, but his people. Slandered Onias as if he had terrified Heliodorus and been a worker of these evils. So operated in slander, backbiting, wickedness, evil communications, lied on him in the whole nine, right? That was the reputation that Simon had. And it says, thus he was bold to call him a traitor, that he had deserved well of the city and tendered his own nation and was so zealous of the laws. But when their hatred went so far that by one of Simon's factions, murders were committed. So it went so far, right? They got this whole little issue going on amongst them that one of Simon's followers started carrying out murders against those who were committed themselves to righteousness. This how bad it got within our nation. The battle between Hellenization and the battle between righteousness. So far that you had individuals that were so enthralled and following after Simon, looking to prove themselves, went out and committed murders against their own people. Verse 4 says, Onias seeing the danger of this contention and that Apollonius as being the governor of Seleucia and Phoenice, did rage and increase Simon's malice. So Onias is looking to be diplomatic. He's saying, man, I see where this is going. This is bad. Our nation is getting, divided. People are dying. He said, man, I got to go here and I got to go plead to Apollonius. It says he went to the king not to be an accuser of his countrymen, but seeking the good of all, both public and private. So he went to go and negotiate. He said, I'm not even going to accuse and snitch on my countrymen, but let's find out how we can, have a righteous recourse into stopping this. It says, for he saw that it was impossible that the state should continue quiet and Simon leave his folly unless the king did look thereunto. So Onias went to the king and was like, look, man, this is going to be constantly uproars amongst our people over here, man. Unless Simon stops this foolishness, I need you to look into this, right? So he says, but after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. So we see the transition now. Remember where it said a wicked root came up? So Antiochus called Epiphanes, that we read in 1 Maccabees 1 and 11. This is now getting back into when he began to rule. He took the kingdom, that wicked root, right? And now Onias' brother Jason, who also is a damn Uncle Tom, he labored to try to usurp Onias as the high priest. Said he did it underhandedly. Look at that. So Onias is high priest, and his brother pops up envious and says, I want to be high priest. And what did he do? He went ahead and sold his people out, committed them to Hellenization in order to impress the king and get a little chump change in his pocket. Gave money to the king, did it all to try to impress Antiochus, to give him favor to be high priest. Look at this. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus called Epiphanes, took the kingdom, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest. Let me see the time, man. Okay, we all right. Continuing on, it says, Jason, the brother of Onias, labored underhand to be high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. So look what he did. He promised him. He said, look, if you make me high priest, I'll give you 360 talents of silver and another 80 talents on top of that. So he tried to buy his way into being a high priest. And where was he going to take the money from? Oh, that same temple. The same temple treasury that Simon was trying to exploit. See that? Look at where's that precept? Let me look at Matthew. Oops, lucky. Matthew 16 and 26. See, this is why Yahweh said what he said. For what is a man profited if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul? And what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? So we hear that all the time. What profit a man if he gain the whole world, lose his own soul, right? So what profit is there in selling out your people, selling out your soul, committing yourself to damnation because of the sin and unrighteousness in which you committed acts of treason against your people, right? Yahweh was acknowledged. He said, man, what good do you have but damnation, hell, and the lake of fire? Because you wanted the profit, you wanted a little position, you wanted to be the high priest, you wanted some money, you bribed your way to get to where you needed to be. See, and that's where the destruction came into play. Philippians, the second chapter, speaks on how we're supposed to conduct ourselves, right? Philippians 2, 1 down to 3, it says, if there be therefore any consolation in Hamashiach, if any comfort of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any bowels and mercies, fulfill ye my joy that ye be like-minded. So Simon was supposed to be standing firm with Onias. Jason wasn't supposed to be trying to usurp authority from his brother. They're supposed to be standing like-minded. It said what? Having the same love, being of one accord and of one mind. But that's not how Satan operates. That's not how our people be operating. They sow discord, backbite, hate, evil communications, spreading rumors, gossip, being busybodies. That's what our people love the most. And Satan knows it. Our enemies know it. The love of money, power, rulership, domination, adoration from the people. Then we stop being on one accord and one mind. But look at this. Verse 3 is what I want. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory. So what's it say? Let nothing. That's clear. Be done through strife or vainglory. Did our forefathers learn about this? Did they? No, they didn't realize that. As we see two brothers, going at it. Blood brothers going at it. You had outside brothers, Menelaus, Jason, Simon. I mean, all these cast men was looking to sell out our people. And what did it do? It turned our people into Greeks, Hellenized, completely turned out, breaking of the Sabbaths, breaking of the laws, not circumcising our sons no more, eating unclean foods and meats and the whole nine. I mean, enlisting and following out the Greek customs and ways, the sports, everything else, destroyed our people. Because of what? The initial the debate or problem between Onias and Simon. That turned into, Simon's brother rising up against him, Jason. And who suffers? The whole nation. Let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. So remember, Yahweh Shai said, the meek shall inherit the earth. So esteem, exalt, push up, let others shine, right? Let each esteem other better than themselves. No strife, vainglory, right? Lessons to be learned for us, because we see what ended up happening. Verse 9. You know what? I'm gonna drop down. You know what? No, let me read a little bit more down. So Jason trying to bribe his way into getting the priesthood from his brother, right? It says, besides this, he promised to assign 150 more if he might have license to set up a place to exercise. Look at that. So when we just got to reading back in Maccabees 1 and 11 and down, and it was talking about wicked man rose up and told our people, man, we've had much sorrow since we've been under the since we haven't been participating in following the ways of the Greeks, and let us get out here and be like the Greeks now. And what did it say? They ended up getting a license in order to follow after the ways of the Greeks. So Jason went off and applied. He said, I'll give you 150 more talents if you give me a license. We can set up this place to exercise. And if you look up and know the history about the gymnasiums, by definition, and how they was operating back in the times of the Greeks, it said this was a place of naked exercise. So all of the main gyms that we see now, 24-hour fitness, Planet Fitness, all these big time gyms and all that other stuff, man. A lot of times, man, you'd be seeing these damn either might be walking around butt naked in the steam rooms, in the showers, going to change, hanging out. They don't give a damn, because that's in their spirit, that's in their customs and their ways. When you look at the WWE and all the old wrestling factions and all that, man, it's the reason why you see these cats out here with Speedos on, greased up and oiled up, with knee pads and elbow pads, jumping on each other, grinding on each other, pinning each other down. I'm ashamed of this, man. I used to, as a kid, man, I was, seduced in watching the WWF and Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and all these guys. We think it's all entertainment, man. Oh, these guys are really fine. It turned into like a soap opera for men and for kids and teens. And then once I get this understanding, and when I came to the truth and I'm understanding, I was like, damn, why was I watching that? And I ain't, a lot of brothers know y'all was watching that. Some of y'all still watching it now. Watching the Rock and everybody else still out there greased up, grappling with each other, This is what was going down. So Jason goes off and applies for the license to get out there to start having our people be Hellenized. And it says, and for the training up of the youth and fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians. So he even gave him a team name, right? Training up the youth in the fashions of the heathen. So the dress codes were changing. Oh, no longer you wearing your fringes no more. You're wearing after the Greek garments and the clothes, you know. So far gone are the tunics and the robes and the righteous apparel and the glorious and the warlike apparel that our forefathers was wearing. Now we're wearing after the fashions of the Greeks. To write them to Jerusalem by the name of the Antiochians, which when the king had granted, and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion. So this is where we see what ends up happening, man, with our people getting sold out. Brought his own nation into the Greekish fashion. So this is the beginning of the Hellenization. You can read the rest on your own time. I'm just going to skip down a little bit and get another point here. It says 3 years afterward, Jason sent Menelaus, the aforesaid Simon's brother, to bear the money unto the king and to put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself, offering more than Jason by 300 talents of silver. So look at this. In fact, sellouts between each other. Jason sent Menelaus to go and give the tribute money to the king so that he can be anointed the priesthood. Menelaus says, to hell with that. I'm going to give an additional 300 talents of silver so that I can usurp it from Jason. Now, this is how bad our people have fallen astray. Proverbs 3 tells us, envy not the Proverbs 3:31 says, envy not the oppressor and choose none of his ways. We just got to reading about how the 4 generals of Alexander made wars with each other. Remember the wars of the Diadici, fighting for power, the whole nine, man. If you look at Daniel, I believe the 8th chapter, the 11th chapter, First Maccabees 1, it talks about the wars that was going on between the Seleucid and the Ptolemy dynasties and whatnot. There was always infighting for the so-called white man, vying for power. So when we look at him, we're trying to see, this is how we know our people got completely turned out as well, because we look at, how do our people look at prosperity now? On the left-hand side, we see them doing and committing all manners of acts of wickedness, robbing, stealing, kidnapping, drug dealing, rape, so forth and so on. I mean, all of these things our people have committed themselves to. Scheming, scamming, lying, deceit. All these things the so-called white man did and does. We're looking at colonization. What do our people do when we're trying to move in on drug territories, move in on gang blocks? We go colonize and we go to war to take them over. Same way they do with the cartels and everything else. That was learning the ways of our oppressor. The Lord said, don't learn his ways, any of his ways, and don't envy how he came up. I think it's in Psalms 37 chapter. It said, not to care about how the wicked are rich, kind of paraphrasing. But nonetheless, look what ends up happening between, first you got Jason usurping the priesthood over Onias and paying his way off. And then he entrusted to Menelaus, and Menelaus says, man, please, I'm going to get it for myself and bribe another 300 talents of silver over that. So look at this. 3 years afterward, Jason sent Menelaus, the aforesaid Simon's brother, to bear the money unto the king and to put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself, offering more than Jason by the 300 talents of silver. So he came with the king's mandate, bringing nothing worthy the high priesthood, but having the fury of a cruel tyrant and the ravage of a savage beast. Look how far out the spirit our people then got, man. Then Jason, who had undermined his own brother, being undermined by another, was compelled to flee into the country of the Ammonites. So then he had to go flee to the damn Ammonites for comfort and security, because now Menelaus took over like a cruel, savage beast as he got power. So Menelaus got the principality, but as for the money that he had promised unto the king, he took no good order for it, albeit Sostratus, the ruler of the castle, required it. So I'm gonna just drop down a little bit. Y'all can read this whole history, man. It's unbelievable of what our people was going through, and the wickedness and the malice and the envy that our people were moving in. Verse 32, it says, Now Menelaus, supposing that he had gotten a convenient time, stole certain vessels of gold out the temple and gave some of them to Andronicus, and some he sold to Tyrus and the cities round about. Which when Onias knew of a surety, he reproved him and withdrew himself into a sanctuary at Daphne that lieth in Antiochia. So look at what's going on. Menelaus is so wicked, man, sold out, a sellout, then was ruling with savagery, made his former partner flee and go get comfort, go get security amongst the Ammonites, stole money from the temple, selling it for his own profits. I mean, this is what was going on. Meanwhile, our people is getting turned out. You got the Antiochians, they were following out the Greekish fashions. They all getting turned out. Everything is all upside down and jacked up. So you see the state that our people was in at the time. All this is going on, right? So there's a necessary need for our people to have some change go on. We need what's going on with this thing? Why is this thing tripping? Slacky. So we see all of the issues that's going on within our nation. Our people is turned out, Hellenized, following after the ways of the heathen and the Greeks, sold out. The temple ordinances and the priesthood has been compromised. All manners of evil and wickedness is going on. Um, and at this time, we're seeing and realizing that change needs to happen, right? So let's look at Maccabees real quick. And all throughout this time, our people is going through the necessities of trying to get change within our nation, and righteousness being instilled back in. It says, in those days, Salaki, let me get back to where I was. And Salaki, so back to First Maccabees, the second chapter, first chapter. Salaki, Maccabees 1, second chapter. So the plight of our people is at stake. I'm going to read just the introductory of who was appointed to get our people back in line. In those days arose Mattathias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Joarib from Jerusalem, and dwelt at Modin. This is how we know that this bloodline comes from the priesthood, the line of Aaron. Not this the Simon that we was reading before. It said that he was of the tribe of Benjamin. So don't be confused. Okay. So Mattathias, and he had 5 sons: Johanan called Caddis, Simon called Thasi, Judas who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Avaron, and Jonathan whose surname is Aphis. Okay. So who we're going to concentrate on today? Simon, which was called Thasi, which was, a righteous man of the Lord. Now, if we're getting over here, I just want to get to the point. I want to share something with y'all real quick. I'm going to look at a little bit of this book. And you can read the first Maccabees 2, 3, 4 to get a little bit more history. But I want to share this with y'all. What's wrong with my... Hold on, y'all. Mouse was tripping. Why is this thing not showing? All right, my bad, y'all. I don't know what's happening here. But nonetheless, let me... Calendar is not opening up. Let's do it that way. Okay, so there's a book called The History of the Jews from the Babylonian exile to the present. All right. I just want to read a little bit from the historian's perspectives by Solomon Grazel. It's a good book, man. I suggest if you're looking for some uh, information regarding the history of the Jews and covering that span, this is a good book. It's fairly cheap. You probably can find it on Amazon or whatnot. But it's like over 700 pages. So beware. But anyway, I just want to pull out some highlights that they have in regards to the history of the Maccabees. So, looking at page 61, it says the Maccabees fight for survival. The Jews fight a war against tremendous odds and save themselves from paganism. So it says the Maccabean age, the next 50 years of Jewish history from 200 to 150 BCE, were years of tremendous importance, filled with stirring events. These events transformed the Jewish people from Judaism and left their impress upon Jewish life to the present day. This age, called the Maccabean era, was as significant for the Jews as the era of the French Revolution was for Europe and America in the 18th and 19th centuries. Since amongst all that happened to the Jewish people was inseparably connected with events outside of Judea, brief reference must be made to the ambitions and the fortunes of the empires and the kingdoms which then controlled the world to their powerful rulers. All right. So looking here at the history that we just got to read in Maccabees, so this coincides with this only strengthens what the Bible has already pronounced. Judea becomes a Syrian province. Syria's ambition, the Seleucids nursed the ambition of reuniting all of Alexander's conquests by the year 198 BCE. Antiochus III, called the Great, took the first step in that direction when he forced Egypt to give up Palestine. So this is where we're seeing the Seleucid Empire going against the Ptolemaic Empire and trying to consolidate into one kingdom rule. All right. One obstacle lay in the path of the Seleucids' march to the world dominion. Rome had just destroyed the power of Carthage and was gradually acquiring supremacy over the Mediterranean lands. So this is what we were just, reading about Antiochus coming to power, so forth and so on. All right, let's move on to another page in the book, page 62. Let's see where I want to start at. Let's start here. It says parties among the Jews. Differences of opinion often result in political parties. When the Seleucids tried to realize their ambitions, one group of Jews favored the annexation of Judea by Syria, and another wanted Judea to remain part of the Egyptian empire. Naturally, Hyrcanus, son of Joseph ben Tobias, was on the side of Egypt. Remember, we read about him. It said that a lot of the money that was in the temple belonged to him, right? So it says, naturally, Hyrcanus, son of Joseph ben Tobias, was on the side of Egypt, whose tax official he was. He and his henchmen were opposed by his brothers and other wealthy men who sided with Syria because they thought it would be victorious in the end. And all the common people had so far taken no part. What difference could it make to them whether Hyrcanus or someone else was tax collector, whether a Seleucid or a Ptolemy counted them among his subjects? But as soon as religious matters were involved, the common people were bound to take sides, and real political parties began to develop once more. The attack on Judaism, the sanctity of the temple. In order to gain their ends, the pro-Syrian faction curried the favor of Seleucus by revealing to him that much money belonging to his opponents was stored in the temple. Remember that? There was some truth in this. In those days, there being no banks, all temples were used for storing treasures. The sacred character of such places made it almost certain that a thief would not dare accuse the anger of a god by taking what the god protected. No doubt, some of Hyrcanus' money, along with other treasures, were stored in the temple at Jerusalem. Seleucus, ever anxious to lay his hands on more money, dispatched Heliodorus, one of the officials, to confiscate the money in the temple. A Jewish legend tells that when Heliodorus went to the temple, he was confronted by a man on horseback who had him beaten to within an inch of his life. Heliodorus was scarcely able to leave the sacred place. So we see the historians compounding on what we read in the scriptures. Jumping over here to page 63, the high priest is removed. The pro-Syrian faction now decided to remove the high priest. That done, they could gain control of the council and then proceed to revise the government of Jerusalem and all of Judea. So we see that the high priesthood was compromised. they removed the high priest and said, with that being done, now they could take over and they can, move forth with the Hellenization and controlling of the temple and the people. So it says, in all of Judea, with their suit their own views and interests, they felt that their plans stood a better chance of success this time because a change had taken place in the government of Syria. Seleucus IV had died, and when he had been succeeded by his brother Antiochus, who had then usurped the throne, which rightfully should have gone to Seleucus' son. Now Antiochus IV, like his predecessors, also cherished the great ambition of conquering Egypt and making his empire large, strong, and united. All this he hoped to achieve by means of attacking the various provinces to himself. As the embodiment of Greek culture, he gave himself the surname Epiphanes, which means the visible God. Remember we read that in First Maccabees 1 and 11? I mean 1 and was it 8 or 9? But we read that earlier. In other words, he and Jupiter were to be considered identical. So he made himself a god. So even when we get back into like Second Thessalonians 2, and it says that the man of perdition is going to be sit in God's temple and make himself that he is God. I mean, this is the inception where we see it. When it said the mystery of iniquity has already began, going back to these times when the so-called white man appointed himself and saying he is God. In other words, he and Jupiter were to be considered identical. Worse still, he acted as though that was really the case, with the result that people began to call him Epiphanes the madman. All right. It says, since Palestine, especially Judea, was the province bordering in Egypt, it was most important to Antiochus to have a loyal Hellenized population there. Yet that very province was there one in which Hellenization had made least progress. When therefore a group from among the Jews themselves came to him and proposed a way of speeding Hellenization in Judea, Antiochus was eager to fall in with their plan. So who was that? Remember, that was Simon, Jason, these cats. It says the plan was a simple one. Onias III was to be removed from office, so they had to get rid of the righteous high priest so that they can move in and take over and commit themselves and their people to Hellenization and wickedness. So the usurped Onias to be removed from office, and his Hellenized brother Jason was to be put in his place. In return for a sum of money, Antiochus promised to grant Jerusalem a Greek constitution and the right to coin money, which would be very helpful in developing the city commercially. So we see what ends up going down. All right, let's look at this right here. I thought, yeah, hold on. This is just a little information about Menelaus and his wickedness, right? Um, hold on. Okay, let me drop down here. I skipped a page. It says the plan was carried into effect, and the feelings of the common people were outraged. It was the first time since the Jews returned from the Babylonian exile that a non-Jewish government had interfered in the succession to the high priesthood, treating the sacred office as it were nothing more than an ordinary governorship. But worse to come, now that the Hellenizers had full control of Judea's government, they began to build gymnasiums within Jerusalem in which the young people were encouraged to spend a great deal of time. So now they're occupying. Remember that under Jason, part of his bribery was to pay off Antiochus to get the license to build the gymnasiums. They started creating, all the youth was being called uh what they call it, Antiochans. Gave them a name. They followed out the Greek customs and ways, the dress. Uh, Committing themselves to compete in like Olympic games and all of that under Antiochus. Very similar to what's been getting ready to happen in this summer with the Olympics. You got all these Jakes, black and brown and Native American, all training to go represent America in the Olympic Games as usual. See, they began to build gymnasiums in Jerusalem in which the young people were encouraged to spend a great deal of time. The young priests neglected their duties in the temple in order to engage in sports. Greek styles and dress, Greek names, the Greek language became stylish in Jerusalem. And worst of all, the Hellenized life brought with it looseness in religious observance as well as the characteristically Greek looseness of morals. So think about that. That's what's going on back then. That's what we see going on right now. I mean, how many of our people are willing to neglect the temple ordinances, the worshiping of the Most High, the keeping of the law, so that they can engage in sports? That all goes on right now. I mean, if you see now, most of the sports games that go on right now are damn near playing 7 days a week. The only one that doesn't is I think football, because they play on Sundays, but even throughout the schedule, they have games on Saturdays. It's always about defiling of the Sabbath, you know. So they doing all those things, right? Um, there's some more in this book. I don't want to go too far. This right here was talking about Mattathias and the sons that we just got to reading in Second Maccabees. Excuse me, First Maccabees, the second chapter. Um, here is all of the wars that the Maccabean family were fighting against the Greeks. It wasn't just one war to get the temple back. There was multiple wars that they had. These are called the Maccabean Wars. Okay. As you see here, man, there's all kinds of battles that were going on throughout the time, right? So here's one we're going to concentrate on. Simon succeeds Jonathan and returns independence to Judea in 142 BC. So let's look at that, and then we'll close out. We're going to look at First Maccabees 13th chapter. Come on, what is going on with this thing? I don't know why. Okay, so let's look at this real quick, and we'll just kind of skim through this history uh, in closing to give Simon his memorial and honor. All right, so it says, now when Simon heard that Tryphon gathered together a great host to invade the land of Judea and destroy it, and saw that the people was in great trembling and fear, he went up to Jerusalem and gathered the people together. So Tryphon is another um, opposition in general of the Greeks and ruler of the Greeks that were getting ready to commit wars of acts against our people. Acts of war against our people. Simon is rising to the occasion in order to defend Israel. It says, and he gave them exhortation, saying, ye yourselves know what great things I and my brethren and my father's house have done for the laws and the sanctuary, the battles also and the troubles which we have seen. So he's talking about all the history and all the issues that they were having. I just got to show you all of the battles that was going on. See here? He said, yeah, everybody, all of Israel was hearing and knew about and saw and committed themselves to fight. He says, you heard about all of these wars that we went against the Greeks, all to defend Judea, Jerusalem, the temple, right? He said, you heard about all these things. All of the battles and troubles which ye have seen, by reason whereof all my brethren are slain for Israel's sake. So he said, man, I've lost my whole family for Israel, and I'm left alone. All his brothers were killed at the time. Simon was the last one left. It says, now therefore, be it far from me that I should spare mine own life in any time of trouble, for I am no better than my brethren. Didn't we just read that in Philippians? Let each one esteem one greater than the next, than himself. Let me get that back. Philippians 2:3 says, let nothing be done through strife or vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, let each esteem other better than themselves. So Simon was acknowledging the same spirit. He said, I'm no better than my brother. And he said, I'm not going I could be selfish and spare my own life and get the heck out of Dodge and leave Israel to be conquered by Tryphon and the destruction of our people. He said, but I'm not going to go out. He said, I'm not better than my brethren. My brethren died for our people. I'm going to go out on my sword like everybody else. In his legacy, he said, doubtless. So in full faith and confidence, what did he do? He said, I will avenge my nation and the sanctuary and our wives and our children, for all the heathen are gathered to destroy us of very malice. Right? Now, as soon as the people heard these words, their spirit was revived. See, that's speaking and being on one accord, speaking the same things, having the same mind. You see what happened back when was it Simon went in the other Simon, or Jason was it, that went in to storm? No, it wasn't Heliodorus. I'm tripping. Heliodorus, when he went to go seize the money from the temple, and all of Israel went out, bewailed and mourned and wrapped themselves in sackcloth and cried to the Most High that he didn't take the money and destroy their wealth value. And the words of the Lord, I mean, the prayers were heard, and the words of the Lord went forth and shut it down. That's how our people's spirit was revived. They heard the words of righteousness coming from the mouth of Simon Maccabees, and their spirit got revived. Right? It says, and they answered with a loud voice, saying, Thou shalt be our leader instead of Judas and Jonathan, thy brother. Fight thou our battles, and whatsoever thou commandest us, that will we do. So Israel became under one accord. They were ready to stand firm on the laws and the commandments and follow after their new leader, Simon Maccabees. It says, so then he gathered together all the men of war and made haste to finish the walls of Jerusalem, and he fortified it round about. Okay, so now I'm going to just drop down. So Tryphon is moving forward to attack Simon and the rest of the men of Israel. I'm going to start at verse 20, and we'll see how this plays out. And after this came Tryphon to invade the land and destroy it, going round about by the way that leadeth unto a door. But Simon and his host marched against him in every place wheresoever he went. Now they that were in the tower sent messengers unto Tryphon to the end that he should hasten his coming unto them by the wilderness and send them victuals. Therefore Tryphon made ready all his horsemen to come that night, but there fell a very great snow, by reason whereof he came not. So he departed and came to the country of Gilead. And when he came near to Bascama, he slew Jonathan, who was buried there. Afterward Tryphon returned and went into his own land. So we see Simon's brother Jonathan slain by Tryphon. Then sent Simon, and he took the bones of Jonathan his brother and buried them in Modin, the city of his fathers. And all of Israel made great lamentation for him and bewailed him many days. Simon also built a monument upon the sepulchre of his father and his brethren, and raised it aloft to the site with hewn stone behind and before them. So he gave them a righteous burial. Moreover, he set up 7 pyramids, one against another, for his father and his mother and his 4 brethren. So after Simon had buried his brothers and his mother and his father, it's time to get to war. And in these he made cunning devices, about the which he set up great pillars, and upon the pillars he made all the armor for a perpetual memory, and by the armor ships carved, that they might be seen of all that sail on the sea. This is the sepulchre he made at Modin, and it standeth yet unto this day. Now Tryphon dealt deceitfully with the young king Antiochus and slew him, and he reigned in his stead and crowned himself king of Asia and brought a great calamity upon the land. Let's drop down here. It says, then Simon built up strongholds in Judea and fenced them about with high towers and great walls and gates and bars, and laid up victuals therein. So Simon is setting up, getting ready for war. All right. Now, if we continue reading on down, we're going to see how the favor of the Lord fell upon Simon and he defeated Tryphon. It says, moreover, Simon chose men and sent King Demetrius to the end he should give the land an immunity, because all that Tryphon did was to spoil. Unto whom King Demetrius answered and wrote after this manner: King Demetrius unto Simon the high priest and friends of kings, as also unto the elders and nations of the Jews, sendeth greeting. The golden crown and the scarlet robe which he sent unto us, we have received, and we are ready to make a steadfast peace with you. Yea, and to write unto our officers to confirm the immunities which we have been granted, which we have granted. And whatsoever covenants we have made with you shall stand, and the strongholds which ye have built shall be your own. So the king that was over Simon's district, Demetrius, he got full autonomy to defend his people, the temple. The covenant that they made was going to stand. They had great greetings. Tryphon was trying to move in on territory. It was given the authority to stand their ground, right? And it says, and for any oversight or fault committed unto this day, we forgive it, and the crown tax also, which ye owe us. And if there were any other tribute paid in Jerusalem, it shall no more be paid. So there was given a reprieve in regards to tribute and tax. So full favor was being given to Simon during this time of need. all through the power of the Most High Yahweh Shai. It says, "And look who are meet among you to be in our court. Let them be enrolled, and let there be peace between us." Right. So Simon negotiated peace with Demetrius. They ended up going to war with Tryphon, his army, as they tried to attack. It says, "Thus the yoke of the heathen was taken away from Israel in the 170th year. Then the people of Israel began to write in their instruments and contracts in the first year of Simon the high priest, the governor and leader of the Jews. In those days, Simon camped against Gaza and besieged it round about. He made also an engine of war, set it by the city, and battered a certain tower and took it." So these were the instruments that he was making and creating through the spirit and the power of the Most High. When it said that he was made instruments and all of that, he was making battering rams, catapults, all kind of high tech weaponry, high fence walls to defend our people. It says, "And they were in an engine, leaped into the city, whereupon there was a great uproar in the city, insomuch as the people of the city rent their clothes and climbed upon the walls with their wives and children and cried with a loud voice, beseeching Simon to grant them peace. And they said, Deal not with us according to our wickedness, but according to thy mercy." So when you had the Hellenized Greeks that were seeing the favor that was being shown to the Most High, and Simon was sparing none, they went and tried to plead with him, saying, "Hold on, don't deal with us according to our wickedness, but have mercy on us. We want back in. We want to be right." Verse 47. "So Simon was appeased towards them and fought no more against them, but put them out of the city and cleansed the houses wherein the idols were. So entered it into the songs with thanksgiving." See, it's about our people repenting, getting it right, tough love. "Yea, he put all uncleanness out of it and placed such men as there were, as men as there as would keep the law, and made it stronger than it was before, and built therein a dwelling place for himself." So now Simon has regained favor with the Lord, exacted the contract with Demetrius, the righteous, well, not the righteous, but the king. Simon got the stronghold, got back Jerusalem, right? Back converting our people to keeping the laws, getting rid of the idols, putting our people back in righteous position. It says, "They also of the tower in Jerusalem were kept so straight that they could neither come forth nor go into the country, nor buy or sell. Wherefore they were in great distress for want of victuals, and a great number of them perished through famine. Then cried they to Simon, beseeching him to be at one with them, which thing he granted them. And when he had put them out from thence, he cleansed the tower from pollutions." This is why we keep this memorial. Verse 51. "And he entered into it the 23rd day of the second month in the 171st year." So the 23rd day of the second month is to be acknowledged as a memorial dedicated to Simon and his great valiant acts of converting and turning Israel away from their wickedness and getting us back into righteous fold, and is standing firm and battling against the Greeks in Gaza, and creating a covenant with Demetrius and gaining favor back with the Most High, defending our people, defending our cities, defending our laws, defending the temple, um, converting the Hellenized back into being upright. This is to be remembered. 23rd day of the second month. Okay. So when we're looking at the date of May 29th, it's not May 29th according to the Hebrew calendar. It's the second month, 23rd day of the month. Okay. It says, "In the 171st year, with thanksgiving and branches of palm trees, and with harps and cymbals, and with viols and hymns and songs, because there was destroyed a great enemy out of Israel." So we always celebrated the destruction of our enemies and of the heathen and all those that opposed us. Right. So it's a great day. You're supposed to be feasting. You're supposed to have some music playing. You're supposed to enjoy yourselves. Okay. It says he ordained also that day should be kept every year with gladness. Moreover, the hill of the temple that was by the tower he made stronger than it was, and there he dwelt himself with his company. And when Simon saw that John his son was a valiant man, he made him captain of all the hosts, and he dwelt in Gazaria. So Simon's son John is John Hyrcanus. That's another history lesson regarding the Hasmonean dynasty. But John Hyrcanus was Simon's son of the Levitical priesthood bloodline. Um, but notice here it said that this was ordained that we're to keep this memorial. Second month, 23rd day of the month, with gladness. So it said you have music, you feast, you do your thing, and it's all good, right? One thing that we have to acknowledge is that it is not a Sabbath, but it is a memorial that we keep. So as a memorial, it's a remembrance, it's a feast of gladness, joy, or whatnot. So you still keep it as a feast and a convocation of coming together for a purpose, but it doesn't have any Sabbath restrictions. Okay, so Lord willing, this lesson was edifying, and everybody got some history regarding the Maccabees. And enjoy yourselves in the feast in the spirit of the Lord. All praise, honor, and glory to the Most High, Yahweh Shai. I bid everyone shalom.